With the Flash, it's time to stop and rank all 14 DCEU films. This will include The Flash and also Shazam Fury of the Gods, two new additions since the last time I did this list. If you're new to the channel, my name is Max Sinneberg. Here on Max Talks Movies, we talk about movies a lot, as well as other TV show reviews, movie reviews, box office breakdown show every single Monday here on the channel, and as well, these are my movie rankings weekly. So please subscribe, ring the bell. If you're new to the channel, we're almost to 160 subscribers. Please join us as we get to 160 subscribers. Also, please like the video, guys. The thumbs up button, that's how you support the channel with the algorithm now, so more people can watch our videos. And also, please comment down below, what is your ranking of the DCEU films? Is this the last time we should do a DCEU list, as James Gunn's already announced that Blue Beetle will be the first character of the movies coming out this year that will be a part of his DC universe moving forward? Let us all know in the comment section of your DCEU list, as I know there's a lot of people who have varied opinions on a lot of these movies, really the majority of the movies on this list. So without further ado, because there's 14 movies, let's get into this list now. I will be giving spoilers, I guess, for this ranking. There'll be no spoilers for The Flash. So if you have not seen The Flash yet, and you just wanted to see what the ranking was with The Flash, you're all good. I will not give any hints or spoilers for The Flash in this ranking. Without further ado, let's get into this list with number 14 for me, and that is Justice League, the Joss Whedon version of Justice League, the theatrical cut in 2017, which when I did this list before, I don't think was in last place. Before the Snyder Cut, it definitely was not in last place. I still think it was a bad movie, but I didn't think it was like an all-time worst comic book type movie until you watch the Snyder Cut, see a lot of things that they cut out, a lot of things they added into the new version, and this is kind of one of the movies that single-handedly destroyed this era of DC. Just so many things went wrong behind the scenes. If it meant, obviously, Zack Snyder personally having his daughter, commit suicide, and him having to leave the project, and then DC and Warner Bros. Trying to capitalize on that, which is so disgusting and gross, by having Joss Whedon kind of film their version that they wanted the Justice League movie to be, a 2-hour tight kind of Marvel movie with a lot of more comedy influenced in the mix, and kind of getting rid of the darkness that Snyder established with Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman. There just is not a whole lot to like with this movie. The color grading is also really awful, especially when you watch it with Snyder Cut. It just gets even worse on rewatch. I am never touching this copy of Justice League again. For all I know, Zack Snyder's cut of Justice League is the only Justice League movie I know, so that's why Justice League is at number 14. Let me move to number 13 on the list, and that is 2016 Suicide Squad for me. This is a movie that I really liked when I saw it in theaters, but the more I rewatch it, and kind of the way James Gunn used them in his own movie, which we'll get to in a bit, really hampered this film. This film is only watchable based on really its main casting of the characters. Will Smith is a perfect casting as Deadshot, and obviously we know the superb casting of Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, but you also get Joel Kinnaman as Rick Flag, who's also great. Viola Davis as Amanda Waller, Jai Courtney as Captain Boomerang. There's a lot of great elements in the movie. But again, this is another film that clearly was just messed up in the DC stuff when they really were just trying to be Marvel instead of just trying to stick to their guns and make the best movies they can make. So they had this trailer company edit the movie and add in music. And it just feels tonally just all over the place. People are going to prison, people are dying left and right, but we have upbeat music and colors flashing before our eyes the entire film, especially the opening, just really pulls me out of the movie instantly once they start doing the pop music, giving our character intros for people. And I think Cara Delevingne's Enchantress is easily one of the weakest villains of the DCEU. Another Skybeam. It's just a horrible, horrible character that you just don't care about being defeated by the end of the movie. And again, Jared Leto's Joker, I don't think it's as awful as people think, but it is my least favorite live-action movie version of Joker. And he's not in the movie a lot, but even when he's in it, the movie just, again, totally just all over the place. But again, it does bring us some good casting. That's kind of all it really offers up. When we get to number 8, this is number 12. Sorry, this movie got dramatically worse on my second and third rewatches, and that is Wonder Woman 1984, which is a movie that I actually liked a lot the first time I saw it. And then out of nowhere, when I saw it, I thought I was in the minority of liking the movie. And then I was like, so I have to see what people are seeing. And the more I rewatch the movie, the more I just don't want to touch this movie because it's just a really bad sequel, in my opinion. Again, Gal Gadot is great as Wonder Woman. Um, and of course, Chris Pine always delivers as Steve Trevor. And again, this is the inclusion of Pedro Pascal as Maxwell Lord and Kristen Wiig as Cheetah. But so many things just go off the rails in this movie. Just the way they explain how Steve Trevor is back into this movie is, when you think about it, just gross sometimes when you think about it. It was just such an unnecessary thing that they explain to you why Steve Trevor's back, and then it makes absolutely no sense logically. Again, it was good to have Chris Pine back in the movie, but from a story point of view, it makes no sense how he's back in the mix and how they do that. Cheetah is interesting for the first act of the movie, and then once she becomes the Cheetah, it is some of the worst CGI for a main character in any of these DCEU films. And they do it in the dark, but the action scene between Cheetah and Wonder Woman towards the end of the movie isn't very interesting. And then the logic behind Maxwell Lord and what people can wish for, what can't. There's just a lot of assumptions, and there's, for me, just too much suspension of disbelief in this movie of what's going on. I think, of course, when you get started in a superhero film, of course, there's going to be times where you do have to suspend disbelief. I think this movie asks you too much to suspend disbelief, and it's so frustrating. And I think it's, again, also a big movie that absolutely killed Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman and has killed Patty Jenkins for making another Wonder Woman film with Gal Gadot. You know, they made an absolute sensational, widely acclaimed first film. It's amazing how one film kind of destroyed both ways. And it seems like we'll never see Patty Jenkins direct another DCEU film. And obviously, we won't see Gal. It does not look like we'll be seeing Gal Gadot again as Wonder Woman in her own movie. So it's frustrating because, again, Patty's a good director. And obviously, I think Gal is a fantastic Wonder Woman. But again, this is not a good movie whatsoever. When we get to number 11 on this list, and this is where we get Black Adam, which I guess I'm a bit more negative than most people on. It's a very much of its time superhero film, which I think some people are having fun with and some people aren't. But I was just not a big fan of this movie. I think this movie is kind of like one of the most forgettable. We'll get to the most forgettable actually film in the DCEU right after this movie. There's some good action to be had here, and the Justice Society being included, especially Pierce Brosnan's character of Dr. Fate and Aldous Hodge's Hawkman, are really good inclusions into the movie. Overall, I just don't think Black Adam is as fascinating as a character as I think I thought, because this has been a film that The Rock has been sitting on for over a decade to make happen, and it just didn't come all the way through. And I think the biggest reason why is that The Rock, I was kind of interested to see if The Rock could actually play a villain, but you've seen a lot of these even Disney live action films and now DC trying with making a type of a anti-hero / villain be your main character. The Rock sometimes is just The Rock, and sometimes he goes in between being The Rock and then really trying to put on his acting chops on the movie. I think they should have definitely done a Justice Society. Justice Society just needed to be in a different movie before they just jumped in. It's just sometimes it's too much going on as they're trying to do a Black Adam origin story and then trying to really force feed you a Justice Society origin story as well, which is why Noah Centineo's character, who doesn't really get anything to do in this movie as well. Two of the members of the Justice Society really just have nothing to do in this movie, which was disappointing because, again, the other two got a lot to do, and the two younger members of the Justice Society just didn't really get any time to show off what they could do. So that was definitely disappointing there. So I think the inclusion doing Justice Society origin story, Black Adam origin story just never really worked for me. And the action just wasn't as fun as I thought. And it leaves you with a lot of promises that, of course, will never happen again, with especially the Henry Cavill post-credits scene. Let's get to the most forgettable DCEU film, which came out this year, which was Shazam! Fury of the Gods. This is a movie that I was so excited for. I'll get into my love of the first Shazam in a minute. But Shazam! Fury of the Gods is just a nothing superhero film. It does nothing different. Helen Mirren and Lucy Liu play the most stereotypical comic book movie villains that you'll see in a movie ever. They kind of just waste Helen Mirren bringing such a great actress into the fold. And while Jack Dylan Grazer and Rachel Zegler are really good in this movie, they have great chemistry together. There is a kind of a logic leap of why Rachel Zegler would be dating Jack Dylan Grazer's character. And they even bring up how weird it is, and then they still do it. So I like their romance, but the logic behind the romance, I'm not a huge fan of. But the biggest misfire with this movie is really just Zachary Levi's performance. I like Zachary Levi. He should be Shazam. But he is acting like Billy Batson is a 8 to 10-year-old instead of being an 18 to 20-year-old. There's just like the character of Shazam just acts so much dumber in this movie. Asher Angel as Billy gets sent so much to the sidelines, and with that brings Zachary Levi's really immature, over the top performance, which there was a really good blend of being a kid in an adult's body in the first movie, and that's why a lot of people like us like the freshness of the first movie. And that really goes out the window with Levi's performance, who is acting like he's the kid who is Shazam is like a 6, 8, 10-year-old instead of what Asher Angel is, pretty much almost a college student. So there's too many things. A lot of the jokes just don't really work. A lot of the other Shazam people just don't have a lot to do. And there's so much CGI fest filled in the third act of the movie, which has just never got me into it. So it's not a horrible movie. I really like Jack Dylan Grazer and Rachel Zegler. The movie's very watchable when that's on screen. And the movie itself is watchable, but for me, it's just a big disappointment for DC, a very forgettable film. When we get to number 9 on this list, this is where we get the first Aquaman film. This is a fun turn off your brain movie. Jason Momoa, again, one of the best castings of this era of DC as Aquaman. Arthur Curry, he's fantastic in the movie. Really, Willem Dafoe as Volko. Patrick Wilson is really also solid as King Orm, Ocean Master. And that kind of brotherly rivalry between Momoa and him, I think, works in this movie. Nicole Kidman, Tamora Morrison are great as his parents. And then a scene-stealing Yahya Abdul-Mateen II as Black Manta was my favorite part of this movie. And I'm very excited for Aquaman, The Lost Kingdom, just because Black Manta is now not going to be the second tier villain in the movie. He'll be the main villain going to face Aquaman in the film coming out in December. The underwater sequences, I think, work really well. And it's a fun movie to watch because James Wan and the people who made this film clearly had a lot of fun going on. But again, this is a pretty stupid, bare bottom story that you've seen a billion times, not just in comic book movies, but movies in general, how this person is abandoned from society by his parents, comes back and gets to his rightful throne. You've kind of seen this story in a billion other comic book and just regular movies as well. Never really liked Amber Heard as Mira. This is even before and even separating her whole controversy of Johnny Depp. I just never liked the Momoa and Amber Heard dynamic. They don't have really a lot of chemistry together. And I just never wanted them to be romantically interested towards the third act of the movie. So it's a pretty stupid movie. I like that it doesn't take itself too seriously, but it really is a bare bottom story as is. And for me, it's a bit too over the top and cartoonish to really fit into my top tier of DCEU. Now, this is where here come I think for the rest of this top 8, there's gonna be some hot takes. So let me know what you think about my hot takes in a second. My number 8 is Batman versus Superman, but I am doing the ultimate edition of Batman and Superman: Dawn of Justice, which is funny. When I just rewatched this film leading into The Flash, it is funny how they don't even have the actual cut of it on Max. You just have to watch the ultimate edition. I don't even touch. I hated watching this movie in theaters. The actual theatrical cut, I don't like. I do think that the ultimate edition is a strong improvement over it with just even 15 minutes added in, which really elevates this movie. Now, I love both Henry Cavill Superman, and I also really like Ben Affleck as Batman. The way they set up the ending of Man of Steel to set up a grizzled old Batman who has to fight for his people, I really like that dynamic at the beginning of the movie, how they set that up. The whole idea of Clark investigating Bruce, which is even cut from the theatrical cut, but I really like the movie. I love the brutal, gruesome Batman. I don't really love Machine Gun Batman, but I like his gruesome nature of him like tattooing people or branding people. I've always liked that as well. I think it was the perfect introduction for Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. A lot of good stuff for Lois Lane as well. And I think the action scenes themselves are also really cool. The score is fantastic. I think what really holds this movie back, there's a couple things. One, obviously, is Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. It is one of the worst miscastings of the DCEU. And I am one of the biggest Jesse Eisenberg fans, but he is not Lex Luthor. And the quirky comedy that Jesse Eisenberg usually does just doesn't fit Lex. So he's trying to be comedic, and the whole basketball scene, I just have never liked it. And he just never feels like a real threat to Superman or Batman. I think even he's kind of like what Zemo was for Civil War. And even that wasn't that entertaining of a villain as well. And this is even worse with the performance point of view. I think Lex really drags this movie down a lot. But at times, it's sometimes too ridiculous to take Batman fighting Superman seriously. Superman's a god, and Batman, again, I love Batman, but he has no superpowers. And I think this was too early to do Batman versus Superman. It just felt like they kind of force fed this to get to Justice League. So sometimes it doesn't fit, and sometimes the actual threat of Batman being a threat to Superman, he just never feels like an actual threat to Superman during the movie, even when he has the Kryptonian blade. I never liked that. But overall, again, I actually like this movie more than most people. I get a lot of enjoyment out of it, but I do see the flaw. It's a very flawed film as well. When we get to number 7, we get Birds of Prey, a long name for the title of the movie. I have a lot of fun with Birds of Prey. I think the action is awesome in this movie and very different type of action than the rest of the franchise. Also, it's a much more smaller film. The world is not on the line here. It's about like robbing people. Margot Robbie again is perfect as Harley Quinn, as she brings it again in this movie. I also love Ewan McGregor as Roman Sionis. I wish they had more to do with like the actual why he's called Black Mask and why he has a black mask, if he's an actual threat. But the actual performance, the over-the-top comic book nature of the performance, I think Ewan McGregor brings to the table. I also really like Journey Smollett as well as Black Canary. She has a lot more to the movie than I thought. But again, it's really not a Birds of Prey movie, which I think really holds this movie back. Huntress Mary Liv Winstead's kind of wasted in this movie, as well as Detective Renee Montoya, played by Rosie Perez. And then Cassandra Cain's kind of very annoying to me in the movie more than she is enjoyable. So even though it says it's a Birds of Prey movie, I think it really struggles to be so because, again, I mean, this just should have been a Harley Quinn movie and lightly introducing the Birds of Prey, setting up for another movie. But instead, this movie wants to cram in a solo Harley movie with her being shoved into a group as well. I think they just didn't know how to even up the screen time for all the Birds of Prey people. And it seems like 3 of them got pretty much wasted. At least 2 of them for me got really wasted in this movie. And they just kind of just team up out of nowhere. There's no like back and forth. They're just a team now. I wasn't a huge fan of that, but overall, this is some really great action. The movie is hilarious. And I really love, again, that Margot Robbie and Ewan McGregor, especially in the lead role. So I still have tons of fun with Birds of Prey, but for me, it's not a top 5 DCEU film. Now, this is where the controversy will really start with my list. And that's with my number 6 movie, which is the first Wonder Woman film. Now, again, the first 2 acts of this movie probably gets this into the top 3 DCEU. Again, Gal Gadot is Wonder Woman for me, the best performance we've ever gotten in this character, live action, either as a movie or a TV show. It's a fantastic performance. Chris Pine is perfect as Steve Trevor. I also really love Connie Nielsen as Wonder Woman's mom. Robin Wright's a really good addition into the movie. There's a lot of fun things going on. There's a lot. It is a big time important film. As obviously a big time female led superhero film on this level. No one ever thought we'd get a Wonder Woman big time live action movie, and here it is. I think it's a really good movie, but again, for me, the third act is just so bad in my opinion. It just drags us not being in top 5 of the DCEU. The whole twist of David Thewlis' character being Ares the whole time, the CGI bloated fight, that just wasn't what the movie was like for the first 2 acts. Sure, of course there's CGI, but I just felt like I was watching a PlayStation 2 or 3 video game cutscene for the last 30 minutes of this movie. And I think it really does kill a lot of the greatness that this movie is, because the movie is greatness. When she comes out of, not Judgment Day, I forgot what, D-Day, I guess, when she's attacking I think it's the Germans or whatever it is. The Germans, and she walks out. It was an amazing scene, one of the best comic book movie scenes you'll ever see. Again, I really like this movie. I love rewatching it, but for me, the third act just really holds this movie back for me for being a fantastic film, like a lot of people think it is. I'm cool if you love this movie. It means a lot to you. I totally get it. And it does to me as well. I love Wonder Woman. I love Gal Gadot and Chris Pine in this movie. But the third act, again, just eliminates this from getting into the top 5. But a great movie, revolutionary film. It really proves why you can do Wonder Woman in the live action as a main character in movies. Really love this movie as well. Let's get to my top 5. And my number 5 does start for me with the first Shazam film. I love this movie. And it's very similar to Birds of Prey. It's a very much a smaller scale film. And while, yeah, sure, there might be a lot on the line, because it's Philadelphia, very It takes place in one city. What really drives this movie through, yes, there's some really good comedy. Levi's great as Shazam. I really actually like Mark Strong's. He's one of my favorite, just underrated actors working today as Dr. Savannah. And there's some good action scenes, but really what drives this movie home is the orphan story for Billy Batson, played by Asher Angel, and the home that he finds with Freddie, with Darla, with Mary, with Eugene. There's so much, and Pedro, there's a lot. The family itself is what drives this movie forward, and also the parents, Rosa and Victor. There's so much that drives the movie home, but it's really the family and all the adopted kids in this home really drives the movie home. I think it has so many more better emotional beats than the majority of the films on this list. But again, it captures the magic, the chemistry between Levi and Angel with Jack Dylan Grazer also really drives the movie forward. The comedy is on point. There is one scene I just never liked in this movie, which is where Savannah comes in and kills his father with the help of the monsters in his eye, and kills and throws his like dad off the roof or whatever. That scene has always pulled me out of the movie. It goes on for too long, and it doesn't fit the tone with the movie whatsoever. I like the opening scene of Savannah building him up to be the villain, but as the movie goes on, Savannah is way too serious for me, and it doesn't totally fit the tone that our main hero is. And also when they try to force feed Savannah some comedy, it also just doesn't work as well. So I think it could have been reworked a bit, but I love this movie. It has a lot of really better emotional beats, I think, that people give it credit for. It's just a fun time in the movie theater. I've watched it a lot of times since then. And it's such an easy film to watch, which I think a lot of these films, sometimes they're too dark or too serious, or have so much other things going on. It's such a simple film, which I think is so refreshing for DC. When we get to number 4, this is where we get to The Flash. I really like this movie. This could be lower than Shazam the more I think about it, but for now, I'm going to put The Flash at number 4. I really do like this movie a lot. Close to loving this movie. Ezra Miller, whatever you want to say about their outside of the movie screen situation going on with them, I totally understand you going into what they did outside. But overall, Ezra Miller delivers in this movie. It's a dynamic performance and unique performances. Sorry, as playing two different people, as playing two Barrys who are very different from each other. And Ezra Miller does a great job in this movie. They're perfect as the Flash, and probably won't see them again as the Flash due to this movie might be one of the biggest bombs for DC in a long time. Michael Keaton is great as a return to form as Batman. Not just is it great to see him in the cowl, but he does that same performance with the same voice tone, the same kind of kookiness too that he brought to that Batman character. I just love Keaton as Batman. This really does bring it with the Danny Elfman music popping in. Really also like Sasha Calle in the movie as Supergirl. She's excellent in the movie. The whole cast itself is great. The little we get of Batfleck was also really good into the movie. And there's also, this movie's a lot more emotional than I thought it would be. It's a very funny movie. There's a lot of rightfully got a good nostalgia, doesn't feel force-fed to you. But it also has a really good emotional core story for Barry. Barry's story is awesome in this movie. I think if the movie just focused a little bit more on Barry's storyline instead of trying to get all these characters into the mix and connecting everything to Man of Steel and all these multiverse stuff, I think the movie really did focus centrally on Barry instead of going off with a lot more Batman, a lot less Supergirl. This movie could have succeeded for me a lot more if it was just a plain Flash movie with Barry carrying the film. Michael Shannon just kind of gets wasted as Zod in this movie. And overall, what really holds this movie back for me is the CGI. It is one of the worst CGI visual effects we'll see for a superhero movie of this magnitude, of a $200+ million film. It looks like PlayStation 2 cutscenes. And while no matter what Andy Muschietti wants to say if this was on purpose, this or that, it was horrible CGI. And there were a couple scenes that just pulled me out of the movie with how rough the CGI is. And I think instead of making excuses for it, they did all this time to make it better. And if you're not going to explain to us why things look like they do, then we have the right as critics and fans to think the way we do about the CGI. And for me, it just pulls me out of the movie too many times. As I said, once we get to the third act, I think the Barry element in the third act action scene is the least interesting part of the scene. That's a bad thing because he's the main story of the movie. So I really like this movie, but there are some things that are holding it back from getting it into my top 3. When we get to number 3, we have Zack Snyder's Justice League. I adore this movie. I really adore the next 3 movies on this list. This is the Justice League movie I think we've all been waiting for. All of these castings are fantastic. Yes, it's 4 hours long, but it doesn't feel like 4 hours long. There are some iconic moments in this film. The Speed Force scene with Flash saving everyone to help Victor get to it. Get to the the mother box at the end of the movie was awesome. Victor Stone playing Ray Fisher, a terrific performance and a terrific character who was actually thrown to the shed in the 2017 Justice League from a performance and a screen time point of view. And you can really see that Ray Fisher as Cyborg really was the MVP of this movie. He has the most emotional storyline going for him, and he's fantastic in the movie. Ezra's debut really in the mainstay as the Flash was also great. And Ezra's character with Ben Affleck was great. Affleck just being driven, Affleck being driven by the fact that he fought Superman, let him down, and is doing this all in his honor was great. Gal Gadot's great. Obviously, Momoa's inclusion in the movie is great. Also, Steppenwolf, a character that was awful in the 2017 version, has an actual motive and has an actual story going for him, trying to please Darkseid after letting him down for hundreds and hundreds of years. There's so much greatness in this movie. Well, then also the return of Superman. I get chills every single time when Superman's in his old ship, and you hear Kevin Costner back as his dad, and also Russell Crowe building up to him wearing the dark suit and going off. It's awesome. Every time that scene, Superman is fantastic in the little that he's in this movie. This is a near perfect movie. I adore this movie. It's the right Justice League movie. And again, I'm a big Snyderverse fan as well, but I also realize that, again, sadly, we need a hard reboot. And I adore this movie, and I'm going to tell another Snyder movie that I absolutely adore. But I do think for people who are just not supporting these other movies now because Snyder is done, I think everyone needs to wake up and move on. But I do adore Zack Snyder's Justice League. When we get to number 2 on this list, this is where we get The Suicide Squad. This is the most fun I've ever had in a theater for any DCEU film. James Gunn finally brought these characters who were kind of wasted and not good in 2016 film with life. Just like he did for Guardians of the Galaxy, he brings a lot of characters that you've never heard of, that might be weird or not likable, and he makes you root for all these characters, not just for even John Cena's Peacemaker, who got a spin-off show out of this, which is fantastic. But again, you get Harley back, but mainly you get Idris Elba, who's great as Bloodsport, scene-stealing Nanaue, King Shark, voiced by Sylvester Stallone. I laugh every time King Shark says something in this movie. The ruthlessness of Amanda Waller also really brought the team. But Ratcatcher 2 by Danielle Melchior is great. David Dastmalchian as Polka Dot Man. The chemistry between the cast is fantastic. The action scenes are great. I love Starro being the main villain for the third act of the movie, but the whole team itself has great chemistry. The scene where Idris Elba with Bloodsport and Bloodsport and Peacemaker are shooting the villagers, and it's all for jokes, and they're laughing throughout as all these innocent people get killed. And then you walk into Flag's camp and they realize that all those people were actually good people. I laugh every time that scene pops up. It's an easily rewatchable film. I laugh my ass off every time I watch it. I love The Suicide Squad. But again, do I want to see the characters moving forward? No, I think James Gunn's going to do a hard reboot. He's do a hard reboot on everything. I love The Suicide Squad and I love Peacemaker. So that's why The Suicide Squad for me is number 2. And wrapping things up, in first place for me, the best DCEU film ever, not the best DCEU film ever, but for me, the best Superman movie, and that is Man of Steel. Now, this is a movie that gets a lot of divisiveness. This is not their Superman. It's too dark. He snaps Zod's neck off. For me, this is by far and away the most complete Superman movie ever told. Henry Cavill is Superman. He is fantastic in this movie. His chemistry, obviously, with Amy Adams and Lois Lane is fantastic. Lois does not mess around in this movie. She is not the damsel in distress that she was, I think, in the original films. She gets a lot to do. Not just is she a badass reporter like she is obviously in this movie, but she doesn't just sit around and let Superman fall out of buildings to save her. She gets to do a lot of action in the movie. But the heart and soul of this movie is the Kent family, which I adore in this movie. Diane Lane and Kevin Costner are fantastic as Clark Kent's parents. They're both so supportive, especially the Kevin Costner Superman stuff for me is always fantastic between Costner and Henry Cavill. Their chemistry is fantastic. The one scene between teenage Clark Kent and Kevin Costner Right? They talk about being the dad and not being the dad and all those things. And the idea of not trying to use these powers because these people won't accept you. And you have to find the right time to show them your powers for all those reasons are fantastic. Hans Zimmer's score is so fantastic in this movie as well. And another great part of this movie is the best villain we've got in a Superman film, which is Michael Shannon's General Zod. Zod was not just was again Terrence Stamp iconic as Zod, more iconic, but other than just being a badass villain, there wasn't a lot of meat on the bone for Terrence Stamp Zod. There was so much meat on the bone for Michael Shannon Zod. He's ruthless. He was the general of Krypton. The whole opening 20 minutes on Krypton is jaw-dropping to look at. Fantastic. Something you would think we would never see live action on the big screen. But Zod's ruthless, being the general and just trying to know, no matter what, that Krypton has to live on. All that stuff was fantastic. Jor-El helping out his son and Lois, trying to escape. Some scenes were a lot of fun. This is for me, it has the best action as well. So it can get it's a dark movie. And I do think Superman taking off his neck might not be the true Superman, but for me, he had to save Zod's life. It was the situation that he was in. He was not going to let people die for that reason. Now, I do think that the action scene where they got to get tormented and thousands of people die, for me, it was a bit too overboard with Superman like just throwing Zod into building after building after building with no consequences in mind. I know it sets up BVS to have Batman in it, but for me, in the actual movie, I don't love that he's okay just dumping Zod into building after building after building as innocents die. I am so mixed on Jonathan Kent's death. I like the idea of his sacrifice, and I think emotionally it works. But from a logic point of view, it doesn't work. You feel like Clark could easily have saved him in 2 seconds. And at the time, there wasn't social media, and people wouldn't know that he's Superman. Again, same thing happened in Spider-Man 2. Toby takes off his mask, and they don't really tell anyone that he's Spider-Man. I think they could have done the same thing here with Clark trying to save his dad from a logic point of view, but emotionally it does fit the movie. But overall, this for me is the ultimate Superman film. So well directed by Zack Snyder. The emotions there, the characters there, the actors are there, the score. It's a fantastic film. And for me, it's my favorite DCEU films. That's my ranking of the DCEU. What are your thoughts in the comment section down below? I'll see you guys soon.